Hi, everyone. This is John Daly. I'm back with another episode of the Daily Express. Today, I'm here with a guy who has led a very interesting life. He's a former Hollywood actor, an award winning designer, writer, and director, and now he's a best selling author. His award winning memoir, A Cup of Tea on the Commode, is a touching story about caring for his elderly mother in her final years. I'm talking about Mark Steven Porro. How's it going today, Mark?
Good, good. It's good to be here.
Well,
Good to
thank
be
you. Thank
back in the States.
That's right. That's right. Well, thanks for joining me. I wanted to start off by talking a little bit about your acting career and what drew you into that profession. But before we go back to your origins there, I wanted to ask you about a controversy that was mainly created by me, I
Yeah.
admit, regarding one of your cinematic roles. You actually played the flight navigator in the blockbuster film Castaway with Tom Hanks. To
Hmm.
me, that means you have a lot to answer for because the plane crashed on your watch and Tom was stranded alone on an island for 4 years while his marriage ended.
Yeah, poor
But you
Tom.
insist, Mark, that none of this was your fault. I am curious how you defend that statement, being that you were, in fact, the flight navigator.
Well, normally I'd be sitting here with my attorney, but they were busy, or he was drunk in a bar down the street. Um, well, you know what? If you want to blame me, you can only half blame me because I replaced the original navigator. He ended up being a guy that I knew, but he had a scheduling conflict with a series he was doing up in Canada. And at that point in my career, I was doing pretty well. And you get to a point where you tell your agents you don't want to do small roles anymore. And I never did a large film, but I had starring roles in small films and did a lot of guest starring in television. But I got a call from my agent said, "You want to you want to audition for this role in a movie with Tom Hanks, directed by Robert Zemeckis?" And I said, "Yeah, they're up and coming, so maybe I'll join them, see if I can teach them a few things." And so I went in, and I had to look kind of like the guy. I was a little younger. My hair at that point wasn't the color it is now, or the multicolor. So they had to gray my hair, but I passed the first part, and it was a speaking role, so it was a nice union role. Um, and after I passed the first level, the producer took me outside over at, I think it was Sony Studios at the time. And he said, "Listen, if you do this, you're going to be on a gimbal." It was the crash sequence that I was going to be involved with since I was the navigator on the plane. And he says, "You're going to be like on a roller coaster for 3 days. Can you handle that?" And I said, "I dated a French girl for 7 months. I can handle anything." And I got him laughing, and I knew I had the role there. And actually, I called up that girl after and said, "Thank you. You just got me a role. The misery I went through with you was worth it." Um, and then they, if you certain times, you go for an audition, you go home, you wait to hear. This is like you're going right into makeup. And so I'm in the makeup trailer, one seat away from Tom Hanks, and you look, and Tom Hanks is everything you've heard about him is true. He's just a lovely guy, but 4 feet away is $20 million, and Mark is a couple thousand. 20 million, couple thousand, and you're trying to have a normal conversation. And so they grade up my hair, and I get on the set, and Zemeckis was great. But the problem with that role in the film was if you have an establishing shot, which the previous navigator did, he delivered one line to Tom Hanks, so he is now the navigator. So my face cannot be seen anymore. In profile and all the whole crash sequence is me, and all the dialogue was mine. Um, but I could not turn to the camera. And I'm in a movie with Tom Hanks and Zemeckis. And so I would turn as much as I could. And then Zemeckis would say, "Cut, Mark, you can't look at the camera." And I said, "I'm in a movie with Tom Hanks and directed by Robert Zemeckis. Come on, nobody's going to even know I'm here." And so in the trailer, you can actually, people who know me can recognize my profile, but all the hand stuff is very critical. And I had that down. So that if that could have won a special Oscar, for hand action. I think I should have been up for that. So I did that, and even if they can't recognize you, if it's a legitimate role, it's a Screen Actors Guild role, and I'm in the credits. That was the biggest payday I've ever had, because I'm still getting good size residual checks because everybody keeps watching that movie. So if everybody could tune in and check that thing out on Netflix, because it's very nice. And it would be even better. Unfortunately, I've got to split it with the original Navigator. So I think we split it 50-50. So he's probably not happy with me either. But yeah, at least they didn't have to do any reshoots. And that was fun, because I was there for 3 days. And Spielberg, who was producing it, was there for 2 of the days. And one of the I have a fun Spielberg story. We'll see if we can avoid a lawsuit. But one of the days, before we actually jumped into the crash sequence, Zemeckis had the whole cast and crew stand back, and he was in the cockpit, and then choreographed, showing us exactly what's going to be happening in the crash sequence. And so he does his whole thing, and I turn around, and I see a little guy, and Mr. Spielberg is pretty short, and I see a guy with a home movie camera, and I didn't think about it's going to be Spielberg. And at one point, when Zemeckis was done, he says, "Are there any questions?" And Spielberg raises his hand and said, "Yeah, how much is this sequence going to cost me?" And Zemeckis said, "F you, get off my set." But he's a lovely guy, but it was very funny. So you're sitting there in the makeup trailer, and all of a sudden you hear, "He's on his way, he's on his way, he's on his way." And then everybody's on alert, because Spielberg is coming. So he's coming down from Malibu, and he's in the limo, and blah, blah, blah. And he arrived, and he's just a lovely guy. He's sitting in the front of the limo. By contract, you have to be taken to the set in a limo. And when you're an actor and you're doing a union role, you have to be flown first class and do the limos. I've done all that. It's very fun. But Spielberg's sitting in the front because he's just a normal guy. And it was very, very cool. So that was just a lovely experience. And then after I got my paycheck from that, I called up my agent and said, any part in a big movie, one line, anything, I'll do anything. And that ended up being one of my last. Well, actually, no, it wasn't one of my. That was shot in 1999, and then they shut down production for a year because Tom had to lose all that weight. They wanted to do it, I think, in a healthy fashion. So we didn't do a crash diet. And so he may have actually gone off and done something else too. But Zemeckis directed another movie in between with Michelle Pfeiffer and Harrison Ford. So he kept busy. And so after that thing came out, I was well into my screenwriting career, not making any money, but delving into it. And I ended up writing, I would go down to the Austin Film and Screenwriting Festival because I had a couple screenplays that did very well there. And I was a semi-finalist for something that I wrote. And so I'm in one of the sessions, and the guy that, I think it was William Broyles, the guy that wrote Castaway, I told him that I wrote a sequel where my guy actually survived and ended up on the other side of the island. And as I'm telling this thing, this guy is, because it's more of a comedy, and he's cracking up. And I said, but don't steal my idea, because I think this is really good. Because one thing I think they didn't explore, it was Christmas time. And Tom Hanks would find skates and a volleyball, and I'm not sure if he found food, but I had it in my screenplay where this guy, he had Hickory Farms cases of sausage and blah blah, and champagne and wine and cheese platters. He got all the gifts that flowed in from the plane wreck on his side of the island. And whenever he heard Tom Hanks's character coming around going, hello, hello, he would hide. He would hide all the food and everything because he was a jerk. And then another thing that swept up on the beach was sex dolls. Cases and cases of, or at this point, I get large boxes of sex dolls. And he ended up using them as a flotation device. And that's how he gets off the island at the end.
Oh, that's a shame that never went
Well,
beyond the
again, it's a tough business. Someone may still do that at some point, but I thought it was very fun, and this, Broyles liked it very much, and I couldn't get enough of Hollywood to bite on it, but I still think it could be very funny.
Well,
And maybe I got to get Hanks doing it to do a cameo to walk around once in a while going, hello, hello. Anyway.
that's a great story. That's a great story. So let's go back a little bit. So I wanted to get back to your beginnings as an actor. What got you first interested in going into that profession?
Well, I guess I have to blame my mother. She was. I have a chapter in my book called "Our Champion of the Arts," and she was always a fan of the arts. And I grew up in like a suburb of New York City. It was in northern New Jersey. It's about 20 minutes away from the city, or 20 hours depending on traffic. And my mom would take us there. She had 6 kids, and she would take us there to Lincoln Center and to the Radio City Music Hall and Broadway to see a play. And so we had these lovely culture jaunts ingrained in us. And then there was a local choreographer, Peter Gennaro, who appeared with his dancers on the Ed Sullivan Show on Sunday nights. So we'd sit around and watch that. And then almost the whole family was involved with the ballet. And I was the youngest son. And at around 6 or 7, my older brother and sister were in a ballet with the Royal Danish Ballet as kids in Lincoln Center. And I went to see them, and this was like a funny Hollywood story. So I'm in the backstage with them, and some guy bursts through the dressing room and says, "Hey, we need another little kid for the show." And he locks eyes with me. And he says, "Kid, you want to be in the show?" And I didn't know what to say, but I'm waiting, hesitating, and he said, "And we'll pay you." And I went, "Okay, now I'm a professional." So again, they whisked me away into makeup and costume, and I got this great little swashbuckling outfit. And we stood on top of a stage. There was like a bridge built above the real professional dancers below us. And we had to act like we're having a great time, which we were, and getting paid for it. And we had to throw flowers on cue. And so I did these. That was my opening in Lincoln Center and getting paid. And unfortunately, that ended up being one of my best pay acting jobs. If 40 years later, I'm in Hollywood going, wait a minute, $5, in 1960 something was pretty good. But I caught the bug from that. I really liked it. And so then I started studying the ballet. And there was a really good ballet studio in our town, very close. We all went to parochial school. So after school, we all went to the ballet studio. And Irene Fokin was a strict Russian taskmaster. And we butted heads quite a bit, but she was a great teacher. And so I grew up for the next few years anyway, until I decided, I think I retired at around 11. But we did a very well-known production of The Nutcracker, which she brought in for the lead roles, great dancers from New York City, and I had a great reputation. So I was performing as a kid all the time, and then we would do recitals around the Jersey, Philadelphia, and maybe the New York area and stuff like that. But then I quit that because I wanted to go to medical school later on in life. And so I retired from that, and that was my focus. And that's what brought me to the Ohio State University. It was medical school, but then I got bored with being stuck with all the nerds I didn't really care to be with in high school. And I thought, I'm going to be in this thing. I wanted to be an ophthalmologist. So that's like a 12-year program. And I said, I can't be with these people. I got a really strong creative side. So I found out about industrial design, which I didn't even know existed, but it married all my loves, which was math, science, and art. And it was great. And they had one of the best design schools in the country at the time. So I really lucked out. So I did design, and then I ended up having a lot of fun with presentations and things like that. And then one of our receptionists was a model, and she said, "Oh, you should do modeling." And I'm like, yeah. So I tried it, and I started working quite a bit as a model on the side, and then started doing commercials because they said I could act, which was kind of fun. And then I decided to quit that in '84 and moved out to LA to try a very secure business. acting. So, but I started studying right away, and because I wanted to be a good actor. So I studied from day one and pretty much until 2012. My goal was to get on a show called Hill Street Blues, which at the time was one of the best shows in TV. And less than 2 years later, I was on Hill Street Blues. So, and again, what helped me with that was design. So my design actually, because I learned a lot about marketing and stuff like that in my design career at that point. And so I got a call. I started marketing myself quite a bit after I felt comfortable enough. After like a year and a half, I thought I was good enough to at least audition. And so I would send out letters to everybody. And so I get a call from one of the big time casting directors, and she says, "I've got good news and bad news. The good news is I'm interested in, I know good design because my boyfriend's a designer, and I like your letterhead. I have a design idea for you or a project for you. So this is not about acting. That's the bad news." But she said, "Would you be interested in designing the national logo for the Casting Society of America," which was a new group. I mean, all the gateway keepers in Hollywood are casting directors. You have to get through them first. And if you have fans, that really helps because they'll say, "Oh, this guy's good. He'd be good for this role." And then they try to introduce you to the director and the producers and stuff like that. So meeting Jennifer was great because I got to meet all the big time casting directors through this stuff. And so I met at that point the casting director of Hill Street Blues. And so she asked me to come in. I auditioned. I guess it was good enough. And I got that role. So design has fed my career and continues to do so. So I'm really thankful for that.
Yeah, yeah. So you mentioned Hill Street Blues. I was looking at your IMDb page. You were in a lot of big shows, Dynasty, Webster, Walker, Texas Ranger, Anything But Love. Was there a favorite television role that you have, like a favorite character that you played on one of those shows?
Well, I have to say the biggest role was the Walker, Texas Ranger, which is funny, and I still get checks for that. I'll get, I'm over here in France, and so I get most of the residuals go through SAG, and then they go right into my American bank account. But the foreign ones, they'll give you a whole tally. Spain, watch this, and Castaway's always on that. Sometimes even Hill Street Blues, which was, my gosh, 41 years ago now. I would say Hill Street Blues first because that was my first big one. And I've got a fun story about that too. So I'm in a courtroom scene, and when you're a union actor and they go overtime, the money gets very interesting. So you go into what I forgot what the first level is, but then if you get into golden time, you're getting like 3 or 4 times your salary. And so the first gig I did was I did a small part in a movie that also went into overtime. And the same week I did Hill Street Blues. So I said, "Well, I got Hollywood down." It was nice. I made a couple of grand in a week, and but it was a long day. It was over 11 hours, and I'm playing assistant DA, and so we're in a courtroom the whole time, and it's a long day. It's a long for all of us. But in the courtroom, they have what they call extras sitting there filling up the seats to make it look like a real courtroom. And there's this gentleman in his 80s having the best time, even after like 11 hours. And I was just really curious. So I sat with him during one of our breaks, and I'm kind of hinting, saying, "Don't you have something better to do, with the years you have left?" And he goes, "Oh no, I love being around all you young people. You're so creative, and it just feeds me, and I really enjoy it." And he says, "My daughter owns this studio." And I go, "Who's your daughter?" He says, "Mary Tyler Moore." It
Whoa.
was MTM Studios at the time, and Mary Tyler Moore owned the studio, and they did Hill Street Blues and St. Elsewhere and a couple other big shows. Seinfeld was eventually filmed over there. And this guy just likes it, keeps him close with his daughter, and that's why he hangs out on all these sets. And I just thought that was very cool. So that was a lovely introduction to Hollywood on the good side. The Walker, Texas Ranger was probably my largest television role. I played a drug lord down in Texas, a bad guy, and I end up getting killed. not by Chuck, but his son directed the show, which was a lot of fun. And when you're down there, I mean, you're like a celebrity. It was really fun because in Texas, everybody knows where all the guest stars are staying. It was a certain hotel, and so people are hanging out there to do pictures and all that stuff. It was really kind of fun. But yeah, that was fun. That was the first time really going crazy with guns and boy, when you're doing the set with those special effects, I really was getting hit with things, not direct things, but they have these what they call squibs going off in the side of the building and things like that, and there's stuff hitting you in the face. You could easily really get hurt. I did another role where I almost cut my finger off. I'm playing an FBI detector. This was the FBI, I think the Untold Story. They reenact apparently real stories, and we find a coffin. A girl is buried alive in the woods. And so they said, it's around this area. So cameras roll and really dig. And I'm really digging. And part of the coffin had a metal strip. And my finger got sliced. And we're just digging like crazy. And with the adrenaline, I didn't even feel it because I'm trying to get this girl out of the coffin. And all of a sudden they say, cut, where's all that blood coming from? And I'm going, oh. So they had to take me to the emergency room and all that business. And they said, do you want to, whatever. And I said, no, just wrap it up. Let's finish the shoot. The show must go on. So those were kind of fun things, but accidents really can happen. I almost had a car hit me that was supposed to stop. The stunt driver didn't show up. So another guy shows up and says, oh yeah, I can do this. And the first run, he went like 10 feet past where I would have been standing. And I'm like, really, this is the best we can do as far as safety. So you do have to look out for yourself because sometimes even, with the best intentions, things can happen. So
oh yeah, sounds like quite an adventure. I mean, just that there's so many different roles out there, and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. It's yeah. If you go in with the right attitude and so, because it's a tough business. After I did Hill Street Blues and that other thing, so 1 week I did 2 jobs, and I didn't work again for 7 months.
Wow.
And that's not unusual. And then you hate the business. And you're like, oh, this is the worst thing. And then you get a call from your agent saying, hey, you have an audition for this. And you go, I love this. So the highs and lows are crazy. You just have to do your best and level it out somehow. So I was pretty fortunate with that. But it's a tough business.
Oh yeah, yeah. I've heard a lot of stories, but yeah, that you got some good ones there. Let's talk about your book. You're now an author. You've written A Cup of Tea on the Commode. It's won a ton of awards. Can you tell people what it's about?
Yeah, so in 2011, I was living a carefree bachelor life in Los Angeles, and at that point I had a snack food business. I started a lot of businesses, and I say that I started 5 nonprofits, though none were intended to be nonprofit. But this snack food business was something that my dad invented, this half pop popcorn snack. And so in honor of my dad, my brother and I started this commercial business, and we built it into a national brand. And it was the snack of the day in the Rachel Ray show. And it was great. And it was still very unique. Now there's some copycats and they're not as good. But in 2011, I get a call that my mother is living in the house that we grew up in, and she was on her deathbed. So my life kind of changed at that point. So all of her kids flew in. All 6 of us came in, and my mom, she suffered from depression over the years, but she hid it pretty well. But I think at this point, she just turned 89, and she was not happy with her condition, and she was living alone. Yet we had a family living upstairs that were supposed to keep her company. And they were not really doing what they're supposed to do because there was some tension there. So I think Mom looked around and said, if this is what it's going to be, I'm done. And she just shut down. And so my brother said the doctor stopped all medication and all food and called hospice. So when hospice is called, it's not usually a happy ending. So we all flew in, and she was, I called it like a semi-comatose state. She rarely opened her eyes, never said a word, but she would respond to touch. And I think I wrote a chapter in the book called "A Silent Scream for Help," and I think she wanted love back into her house and in her life, and with us all coming there, it brought it back, and she eventually snapped out of it. But before she snapped out of it, my younger sister and I hung out with hospice because we wanted to care for mom as much as we could and learn how to do that because we didn't know how long she was going to be with us. So we had the priest give the last rites. We picked out a nice eco-friendly coffin and all that stuff, but we were still hoping that she would snap out of it. And a few weeks later, she did. And then I looked around. The house was no longer the warm, welcoming house that we grew up in, and these people were an issue. And so it just dawned on me, my mom deserved better, and I had to play a bigger role in that. And so eventually, by the end of the year, I moved back. I asked her first if she wanted me to do this, and I had a special relationship with both of my folks. I was a very curious kid, and got them to open up about a lot of things. So they really, I think, trusted me in a different level than the other kids. And so by the end of the year, I moved back as as a supervisor. But then we couldn't find a full-time caregiver that was any good. And I have a funny chapter in the book called The Parade of AIDS. And that, boy, interviewing somebody, especially for a vital role like that, is not easy. And finding someone you can trust or doesn't have, mental issues and things like that, it was very difficult. So after that exercise failed, I said, okay, I'm going to have to take over full time. So I did, and that's what the book's about. So it's called A Cup of Tea on the Commode because at this point, Mom, I didn't walk anymore, though I did get her walking for a little bit. But we put a commode bedside to make that whole deal easier. And sometimes Mother Nature took a little longer than was comfortable for either one of us. So kind of as a silly gesture, her favorite beverage was a cup of hot tea, skim milk, no sugar. And one morning I just said, while you're sitting there, would you like a cup of tea? And she said, sure. So it became a hit. And then that became part of our morning ritual, a cup of tea on the commode. So I thought it was a fun, catchy title. And and so it's been great because it was my first book. And I never wrote a book. I wrote screenplays and jokes and things like that. But I knew a book was probably going to be the best way to get originally, I just wanted to record family history because I was privy to some moments and some conversations and things like that the other kids were going to miss out, and I didn't want them to do that. So I took a lot of notes, a lot of photographs and videos and stuff. But then I had a friend about the same age going through something similar with her father. And so I shared some of my experiences with her, and she got some benefit from it. So I think some others could do it as well if you jump in, especially from a guy, and not many guys. We're catching up, but it's still about 60-40. The women in the family take on these roles. And I loved it. I mean, it was easy to say, my mom deserved better. I'm going to make sure I play a role in this. Working out the logistics took some time, but I went in saying, this is going to be fun. I told Mom we're going to have, after I did ask her for permission, and she approved. And I said, so just so you know, that means I am now in charge, and you'll have to obey me. And her mood completely changed, And then she puckered up for a kiss, and I wasn't sure if that was a sign of surrender or one wishing me luck, because she could be a tough cookie. So I gave her a kiss and hoped for the best, and it ended up pretty good. She was funny. My dad was funny, and my siblings were all a bit wacky. So I went in saying I'm going to make her laugh at least once a day, and she ended up making me laugh quite a bit. And made the best of it. So my first kid was, at this point, she was 90. It was a 90-year-old child. Guilt tripper.
Oh yeah, it's great that you documented these experiences. I'm at a similar point in my life right now with my parents, especially my father. He's almost 90, so the same age as your mom was. Lots of my friends are in the same place with their parents as well. So I'm curious, having gone through this experience, and you've reached the end of it. Your mother did pass away.
You just ruined the ending of the book.
I figured people.
Can we edit that?
Well, I'm curious, what is one piece of advice that you would give to people like me and my friends who found themselves, as you described, sort of effectively parenting their own parents? What's some of the wisdom you brought away from that experience?
Well, I'd have to say the first thing is if you're do what you're comfortable doing. I was very comfortable, and part of it was my acting and design all kind of played a role in this because I assumed the role of caregiver. So I said, she's still my mother and I'm her son, but I am now the role, I'm the caregiver. So I can't be worrying about having to wipe her butt several times a day and doing a sponge bathing, seeing your mother naked for the first time, and seeing what the years have done to her. Gravity is cruel, and so. But out of, let's say, the six kids, we had two that were not comfortable doing the hands-on stuff, but they helped in other ways. Because if you're uncomfortable doing it, your loved one or your patient's going to feel that, and there's going to be some tension or guilt, and you don't want that. So I went in saying, hey, we're going to have fun. And for me, my motto in any adventure I jump in is find the joy in it. And even during the tough times, you just say, okay, let me focus on the positive part. Did she smile today? Did I do? If you put the onus on making them happy, making their life better, you forget about the own. It's physically, emotionally, and mentally exhausting, but you got to push that aside if you can. If you're not comfortable, find somebody who is, and you can be a supervisor or overlook it just to make sure. But then you got to hire, people you trust, or if you have a sibling that you trust to assume that role. I had one of my sisters was a very dutiful daughter. She was the first child, but she found no joy in it. But she would do it. And so I'd have to go out to California every couple of months to tend to the snack food company, and Laurel would replace me in New Jersey. So we always had a family member there. But she would say, I have a 7-day limit, and that's it. And her relationship with my mom was different, and so I tried to help her and make sure that 7 days was the maximum for her because she was helping me out, and so I had to make sure I tried to help her out. But that was, I obviously I did it for like 3.5 years, so I found a little more joy in it, I think. And my younger sister, whenever she came in, she would jump in and help as much as she could. And my older brother, who hired all the people before I jumped in, would come in on Tuesday nights and cook dinner and then also get mom ready for bed. So he stayed in shape, and just in case he had to jump in a larger role. Yeah, so I would say definitely, if you can jump in and lead with your heart. But I also studied. I learned a lot from hospice, and then I studied other things too. And then again, if you think about, okay, what can I do to make their life better? For my mom and me being, I guess, a bit of a romantic, the first thing I did is I wanted to return some dignity to her. So I bought her a new wardrobe. She had these old, drab, tattered day dresses, night dresses, or whatever. She looked like an old lady. And I said, no, that's not going to work for mom. So I bought her a new wardrobe. And if you want to cheer up a woman at any age, a new wardrobe seemed to do it. And then her appearance wasn't that great, and my mom was a pretty lady. And when she would visit me in Hollywood, I would take her to my friend's beauty salon in Beverly Hills and gave her the movie star treatment. And when she was growing up, she had 6 kids and she was a full-time proofreader for the largest newspaper in Jersey. But she treated herself to weekly visits to the beauty salon where she got a shampoo and set and had her nails done. She had very pretty nails. And so I wanted to recreate that at home also to bring some dignity back to her. So I would do my best to have a salon. So I called it Day of Beauty. There's a chapter about that in the book. And so while she was on the commode, I soaked her feet in Epsom salts. I washed her hair. And then gave her a full body massage, and she got to pick out, what she was going to wear that day from the new wardrobe. And then I blow dried and her hair and put it in a ponytail, or sometimes a braid for bonus points. I grew up with three sisters with long hair, so it was good because I learned more than just to put the toilet seat down. And and she was great. So the first time I did this, then I did her nails, painted her nails, and then I gave her bright red lipstick to match the nails. And I just thought it was a nice gesture.
Oh,
And so,
absolutely. Very, very fortunate to have you as a son. I mean, and
well,
that's good
those are some
advice.
tips. Yeah, if people want to jump in, but even for men, a couple days before my dad passed, I only had 8 days with my dad. So that was very condensed. But he was always clean shaven. He was always very particular about having his hair combed. He always had a comb in his wallet, ready to go. And my little sister and I gave him a nice shave because he had a bit of a growth. He's sitting in bed, going soon, and he was just really enjoyed being clean shaven, to meet his maker and stuff like that. So wanting to be pretty and handsome doesn't go away with age, and that was one of the big lessons that I learned. And I found out through this book, and also with a bunch of interviews and stuff like that, that there are some nursing homes and assisted living places that are starting to bring in people to cheer the patients up by not quite a day of beauty. I should trademark that actually, but doing those little gestures, because it really doesn't mean a lot. So they can't get up and let's go to the beauty salon, but hairstylists can come in and do some things. And I think it's really important because we're all getting older. And they say that I think by 2050, there's going to be like 426 million people 80 years or older. And so we have to deal with this in one way or another, or it's going to be, or it may already be a crisis, but it's a shame. And there's a lovely way to, I think, approach it. So I'll give you another tip that you have to, the pros say you have to take breaks. And so that would be another tip. Because again, the toll on you, whether you believe it or not, is massive. If you're really into this and you put all your efforts into it. And it almost killed me. My mom almost outlived me because I'm a guy, I can take this and blah blah blah. I ended up having 3 emergency surgeries, mostly because I think the first 2 were botched, because I would assume stress, because the doctors couldn't tell me anything else. So I drove myself to the emergency room after 4 days of just intense pain in my stomach. And they said, oh, you have this and you need to go in surgery. And it was like, oh, so I call my brother and say, oh, by the way, I think we need someone to fill in for me. I don't know how long I'm going to be here. And so that was quite interesting.
Oh yeah, it's good to have siblings too that can tag in those situations.
Yeah, yeah,
Great.
yeah,
So
yeah.
you mentioned earlier, Mark, that you live in France and you've lived there now for a number of years, in an amazing looking apartment, as people can see. I'm curious, what brought you over there to that country?
An airplane.
Okay.
And I wasn't the
Quick.
navigator, so it actually got here. You have to bring that up again.
I
Yeah.
know.
Well,
I can't drop that.
yeah. I had an ex-girlfriend always wanted to retire in France. And at this point in our relationship, she was still living in LA. We were friends, but no longer a couple. And I was in New Jersey taking care of my mom. And she said she found a place. Now, no, this was 2015 now. So my mom had passed. And she said she found a place that she really likes in near where I am right now. And she says, and I said, well, if you want, I can come with you. And if we like it, we can go in halves. It'll be a vacation home. You go when you want, I go when I want, and then we rent it out the rest of the time. So we stayed at Airbnb in this little village. It's called Pézenas. It's in southwestern France, in the largest wine growing region in the world. So if you're into wine, it's great. If you're not, it's a freaking nightmare. But I'm into the wine, so it's great. And this town is lovely. It's like 8,500 people, and it's it's like 16th century town. There's cobblestone streets, and my house is almost 500 years old. And as soon as I walked in here, because the original house we were looking at didn't really work for us, and then we started looking at other places. And as soon as I saw this place with this high ceiling and all the stonework, I loved the old. And we find out that a lot of the expats that come to these little places, they have the romantic. Oh, I want this and this, and the French all want modern. So we come in and we renovate these places and make them beautiful again. And so I think they appreciate that. But yeah, my street, I live about 50 meters from the center of the old village, and it's the best part of town. And the town, as they say, is where Molière was born. Not the person, but the playwright. He came down from Paris, and he became the Molière here, and he wrote a couple of his big plays during his time here. And so they celebrate the arts like crazy. There's writers, musicians, painters, ceramicists. I've got one of my neighbors is the blacksmith in town, and so the old-fashioned blacksmith that does his work here on my street is cobblestone, and they have these events all year long that they have also the opera and of course the theater with the Molière stuff, and it's just it's very creative and very cool. And so in this room is where I wrote my book. This is I needed some time. I'm very emotional, especially when it comes to family and stuff like that. So I couldn't write. Once in a while, I would think about things and I'd jot down notes and stuff like that. But I didn't really get down to the writing until I came here, and I had a couple years to sit and think about it. And but it's obviously it's a lovely place. So.
Do you you talked about being surrounded with creativity there. Do you feel like that helped your writing as you were working on that book? And I'm sure you're working on other writing projects now too, but do you feel sort of that atmosphere really contributes to what you put out there?
I would say yes and no. I don't really need motivation, but it is pretty cool. The problem with it is, since I spent a lot of time with the writing and I'm here alone here, it's not helping my French. So before I was writing, I was out, quite a bit and meeting the French people and things like that. And my girlfriend is Swiss, but French Swiss. So her first language is French. And so if I need help, she's my go-to person. I'm pretty good, but boy, they, as we say, they parle trop vite. They speak really fast. And it's interesting. So in the South also, they have accents like we do in the States. So the French that I study is basically Parisian French, and so I have a lot of trouble here getting people to understand what the heck I'm saying. Even though I think the French is good, but I don't know. I thought some people say, "Oh, we're charmed by American accents." Well, I haven't found that yet. They just look at me and they go, "Quoi, quoi?" You
Well,
know.
you'd mentioned before we went live that you've it's been quite a few years now since you've been in the United
You
States.
don't test my
Curious-
French. Don't
Yeah.
don't. I hesitate telling people how long because they go, you should be fluent by now, which
That's
is probably true.
what do you? I'm curious. What do you miss most and maybe miss least about living in the United States?
Well, I'll tell you a quick French story, and then I think you'll get. I don't miss a lot in the States, and luckily I'm of an age, and also I have the finances to, I guess, relax a little bit. But so when I first came here, I ended up buying this place by myself. The girlfriend didn't want to be part of it because she thought it was going to bring us back together, and that wasn't part of the deal. So she bailed on the idea, and it ended up being a blessing in disguise. So when I came here, not knowing the language, but loving this village, and the people were so loving and friendly, and they apologized for their bad English, and I'm like, this is not your issue, it's my issue. But I became good friends with my notaire, who was the lawyer who took care of the purchase of the place. And the notaires are very prominent people in town. And this gentleman came from a family who had been here for, I think, centuries. and he really liked me. And um, one of the things that helps, I had my old acting teacher. I think I did this stuff anyway, but he had like, it's a marketing tip. He says cream puff. Like if you want a favor from somebody, you don't lead with the favor, you lead with a cream puff. And so to buy this place, it took 17 months to navigate the French financial system. And then I found out the gentleman, I'll be nice, that I bought this place from was pulling a lot of shenanigans while I was away. Anyway, it took 17 months, and I hired a broker after my early frustrations dealing with the banks directly. And they had a set fee, and they said, we'll get you the loan, and we'll do this and this and take care of everything. Well, normally it takes like 3 months. 17 months later, they finally get it. And they didn't charge me any extra. So they had to lose out on this thing too. And I was very frustrated. But when we finally got approval from everything, in the subject line, my broker said, "Good things come to those who wait." So I said, I'm going to make T-shirts for everybody, because I had the team, I had the notaire, I had the real estate agent here, and the notaire's assistant, and then my 2 brokers up in Paris. And so I made T-shirts that said, "Good things come to those who wait, and wait, and wait, ... And then Pesanas 2016. And you would think these T-shirts were like a brand new car or something. So I gave these out to the team when I arrived, and this notaire, Bernard, he was like, "Oh my," so we became like best buddies, and it was lovely. And he was a really important, he was like a Don in the mafia. He present, you don't introduce, because that's in French, that's kind of more of a sexual term. You present. So
Good to know.
just so you know, a cultural thing. So he presented me to a lot of prominent people in town. So I became like the respected American, and it was fabulous. And so we went out to lunch and dinner a few times, and then he calls me up. He says, "You want to go to a vendage?" And I said, "Yeah." "What's a vendage?" And then at this point, it was the mid-September, lovely weather. And a vendage is they celebrate the harvest, the wine harvest. So you go, and if you want, you cut grapes, and then they have a big celebration. And so I said, "Sure, we go do this." And so we go to a domain just outside of town, and I stepped into a French movie. It was a gorgeous chateau. You take a grand stone staircase over a moat, and you're in this like 19th century chateau. And they've got pigs and goats or whatever, and sheep on the Barbie. So you have a gentleman, Hassan, is barbecuing, and then Christophe, who is the owner of the domain, says, "If you want to cut grapes, come cut grapes." He showed us how to cut and of course I'm doing it. So you cut the grapes, and so you spend a couple hours. And while we're cutting grapes in the vines, a jazz band is following us down the vines. And I'm like, this is unreal. And it was a perfect day. And so after you cut the grapes, then all the villagers start coming in with side dishes. And inside the chateau, they had all tables. So they're bringing the desserts and the salads, and of course the bread and cheeses and all the vegetables, while the meat is cooking in the barbecue, and the band set up in front of the chateau. And so you're spending the whole day, and it's lovely. And Hassan, the guy barbecuing, spoke some English. And so he and I chatted throughout the day. And then at the end of the night, since I was now a made man, I stayed. And so we have, the jazz band still playing, but almost everybody else is gone. And we've been drinking all day and eating. So, we're a little maybe toasted. And Hassan is sitting next to me, and he says, "Mark, you're American, yes?" And I said, "Yeah." And he says, "You must stop," because they all know us as go. We eat while we're standing and working. And he says, "You must stop and take this all in, because this is the life in the south of France." And I started crying. It was just beautiful. And I said, "I'm home. This is the life I want." And they have it right. They have the lifestyle correctly. It can be a little frustrating, but They take 2-hour lunches, and it's great because it's during the school year. The kids all come home and they have family lunch. It's fabulous. So lunch is ritual, and if you're in a store and it's close to 12, because 12 to 2 is it, they will chase you out of the store unless you have a full cart, and you better get ready to check out, because it is religion. But once you get used to it and you gear your whole schedule around that 2-hour block, it's beautiful. And on Sunday, almost everything is quiet. And I grew up in. It's funny. So we have this very religious United States, and getting worse or better depending on what side of it you're on. Out of all of the states where I grew up in Bergen County, New Jersey, which has at least 5 of the biggest malls, we're the only blue county left. Means Sunday, everything is closed. And they've been fighting it for decades. It's still blue, which is great. And because that's family day. And it's just lovely. And here you're forced. All the stores close at 12:30 on Sunday. Boulangerie, the bakery has to be open. I think by law, if there's one in the village, one has to be open every day, because the bread is very important. And the stores all normally close at 7:30 at night anyway. There's no 24/7 here, at least where I am. Maybe in a big city, and it's lovely, because then nights are quiet, or it's for family time or celebration. Some of the bars and stuff are open, but even the coffee shops close really early. There's no Starbucks or any of that. Outside of town, there's a McDonald's and stuff like that. The bigger cities, they have some of that, but inside our village, especially in the historic center, none of that stuff. No franchises, which is great. And so that once you, I guess, get accustomed to that, which I definitely am now. I don't want to leave it. It's beautiful, and the quality of food is excellent. Even my sister, she has 5 kids, and they're very strict with the gluten-free and all this business. And we don't put all the crap in the food, even bread. Bread is flour, water, and salt. And not all these other things, not all these, scientific ingredients and things like that. And it's just fabulous. I cannot gain weight here. And I eat bread and cheese and drink wine and have all the other stuff with the creams and I wouldn't say I don't have that many of the desserts, but I have lost weight here, and it's mostly because we don't put all the crap in the food. It's good quality food, and it's just lovely. So I guess that was not a answer.
Different culture for sure, and I'm glad you're enjoying it. It sounds like you really found your spot in
Yeah.
life. Yeah, it's just I don't want to take up too much more of your time, Mark. It's great to have you on the Daily Express. I always enjoy talking to you.
You're gonna have to change Express. I don't think
That's all right.
Porro's on. That's not Express. It's the Daily Torture.
Oh no! Trust me, you've fallen, but we went a lot less time than some of the other interviews I've done, so no worries at all. We don't have to live up to the Express name here, so we're open to doing whatever, some freewheeling. But I'm going to put your links to your book in the show notes. Where else can people find out about you and your work?
If they Google A Cup of Tea on the Commode, we're everywhere. The website is acupofteeonthecommode.org. I have a YouTube channel with like 175 short little videos that are kind of fun. Most of them are on the fun side. The blog is the acupofteeonthecommode.org. If they want to sign up, they can keep up to date. We do posts at least once, sometimes twice a week. The audio book, the ebook, the large print, and the paperback are all on Amazon and various other places. But Amazon has all 4. I think they're the only retailer that has all 4. And yeah, it's been a fun ride, and people really. What the best thing for me is, I grew up in that village, and once I went to college, that was it, pretty much in New Jersey. And people have found out about this book, and I've been promoting it pretty heavily too. But on Facebook, I'd have to say half of my town must be on Facebook because I get people from Ridgewood always as a friend suggestions and stuff like that. So I have a lot of really fun support because a lot of those people, if they didn't know my parents, they knew family members, my siblings. And so now I'm the conduit between Ridgewood and my family, all the way in France, which is really, they'll say, "Oh, say hi to Dave, say hi to Laurel for me. Oh, I remember you in ballet." And I'm like, can you forget that part? And then other things. Uh, but people who have really gotten something out of this book has been wonderful. And they've been very generous and humbling with their, not just their praise, but their raw, I guess, reflections about their own lives and stuff like that. And the book has helped them, if nothing else, help them laugh because there's a lot of laughs in it as well. Even though you ruined the ending,
Oh, I apologize for that.
it's okay. So
Well, I highly recommend people check it out. It's a great read. Like I said, it's heartwarming, sad at times, but it's also give some good advice in it. So people should definitely check it out. Well, thank you very much, Mark. Thanks again for coming onto my podcast, and I hope you have a great day.
my pleasure. Thanks, John. Take care.